Mr. Meddle and the Clock. Once it happened that a bird began to make its nest inside the village hall clock. The clock always told the time to the people of the village, and it could easily be seen on the tower of the hall. Meddle happened to be in the village hall when the bird's nest was seen. There was going to be a concert that night, and Meddle and some others were putting a great many chairs into rows, ready for the night. Every time that Meddle passed underneath the back of the clock, he heard a tweeting noise, and at last he looked up. A little bird sat there, holding a straw in its beak. "Look at that," said Meddle. "There's a bird building its nest inside the clock. Naughty, naughty." "Tweet," said the bird, and that was all the notice it took of Meddle. "What shall we do about it?" asked Mistress Fanny. "It will stop the clock altogether if we let the bird build there. We'd better get Mr. Tock, the clockmaker, to come and see to it." "Oh, dear me, why bother to fetch Mr. Tock?" said Meddle at once. "I could get that bird's nest out quite easily and shoo the bird away too." "You'd better not meddle with it," said Dame Flap. "You always manage to get into mischief when you do meddle." Meddle pretended he hadn't heard what Dame Flap had said. He bustled about to find a ladder, but there wasn't one. So he built up 5 chairs all balanced on one another. They just reached below the clock. Meddle began to climb up. Good gracious, it did look dangerous. "He thinks he's a clown at a circus or something," whispered Dame Flap. "I know he'll fall. Serve him right for meddling." Meddle reached the clock safely. He found out where the bird got in and out. It was a tiny hole at the side of the clock's works. Meddle found the door that opened the back of the clock. He opened the door and looked inside. Dear, dear, the bird had built quite half its nest already. The clock would have stopped by the next night, Meddle was sure. He began to clear out the straw, dead leaves and moss. He didn't look at all where he was throwing it, of course, and it went all over the people below. They were very cross. "Straw all over my hair," said Dame Flop. "Moss down my neck," said Mistress Fanny. "That tiresome Meddle." The little bird suddenly saw what Meddle was doing and flew at him in rage. Meddle got a hard peck on his nose and he was most annoyed. He nearly fell off the pile of chairs. "Go away! Shoo! Shoo!" he shouted to the bird. But the bird wouldn't be shooed, and it flew again at Meddle. Meddle put up his hand to protect his eyes, and his sleeve caught in the works of the clock. He dragged his sleeve away, and as he did so he made the hands of the clock go round very quickly, so that they pointed to 12:30 instead of to 11:30. Meddle didn't know that, of course. He couldn't see the clock face outside the hall. The bird flew away tweeting. Meddle tried to smack it as it went. He lost his balance, the chairs began to topple over, and down went Meddle and the chairs with a crash, smash, bang. Goodness, what a bump he got. He picked himself up and dusted himself down. He was very angry indeed. He took one look at the laughing people and then walked out of the hall in a huff. And then what a to-do there was in the village. The big clock was the one that nearly everyone used for the time. The people were always popping in and out of their houses to see what the time was by the clock. "Good gracious, it's dinner time and my pudding isn't made yet," cried Mother Fiddle, and she hurried up so much that her dinner was quite spoilt. "Look at the time," cried Mr. Gobby as he hurried by. "I'll never have time to get my dinner today before it's time to go back to work. What has happened to the morning?" All the children were scolded for being late. They simply couldn't understand why the morning had seemed so short. They didn't guess that Mr. Meddle had put the clock on a whole hour by mistake. People had to wait ages for the bus that afternoon because they were at the stopping place a whole hour early. They scolded the bus driver, and he couldn't understand it at all. "It can't be 4 o'clock, he said, looking at the clock. "Dear, dear, I thought it was only 3. What a long time I have been getting here today. I'm very sorry, folks." The children all went to bed a whole hour early. The sun went down an hour too late, it seemed to everyone. People were in a real muddle. And then Mr. Plod, the policeman, who couldn't understand it either, had a good idea. "The sun can't be wrong," he said. "I shall put on my wireless set and get the right time signal." So he did, and soon found that the village clock was a whole hour fast. Such a thing had never happened before. "Who has been fiddling with the village clock?" cried Mr. Plod in a great rage. "Mr. Meddle, of course," said Dame Flap. "He wouldn't let us fetch Mr. Tock, the clockmaker, to put the bird's nest out of the works. He would do it himself." Well, Mr. Tock was fetched to put the clock right. He had to get a ladder and put it up outside the village hall. He found it very difficult to put the clock right, for when Mr. Meddle had caught his sleeve in the works, he had let a lot of straw drop down into the middle of the clock. So Mr. Tock had to look inside the clock as well as put the hands right outside. "This will cost 5 shillings, he told Mr. Plod. And who had to pay the bill? Yes, poor old Meddle, of course. Well, you really would think he'd give up interfering with things, wouldn't you? But I don't expect he ever will.